Hello, welcome once again to my channel. It's your Afrocentric enthusiast. So today I would like us to talk about whether or not Africans were guilty of selling themselves into slavery. There's been a lot of talk about the role of Africans and their chiefs in the transatlantic slave trade. Never has there been so much force. Never has so much force been made about the role of the victim in a matter as the role of Africans in the transatlantic slave trade. That is why it has become necessary for us to talk about this. Sometime around May this year, 2022, American filmmaker Tariq Nasheed, who is black himself, tweeted that Africa owes reparations to African Americans. Now, if the goal of black people around the world is to elevate themselves from the bottom of the ladder of the human food chain to the top, then I think that the tweet from Tariq Nasheed was distasteful, it was divisive, it was incendiary, and it was unnecessary. It was a distraction from the goal. Now, nearly every struggle in human history has had collaborations from the inside, what you call traitors. But the point I'm trying to make today is that collaborators are just secondary factors, and we mustn't lose sight of this. They are not equal in guilt with the main perpetrators, who are the primary factors. And so I would like to take you on a walk through instances in history where there has been collaborators and where history has not been so rough to the collaborators as it is to Africans. Okay. During the Second World War, there were Europeans who collaborated with the Nazis. There were Europeans in Norway called the Quislings, led by a man by the name Vidkun Quisling, who collaborated with the Nazis. There were Zionist Jews who collaborated with the Nazis. Now, the Jews had a Jewish council that was known as the Judenrat. The Judenrat would create an arm of themselves that was called the Jewish police. And their responsibility at that time, during the Second World War, was to go and find Jews, other Jews who were hiding from the Nazis. Now, they were armed with a baton, and they were so effective at finding other Jews for the Nazis that they were nicknamed the Dachshunds. And the Dachshunds are dogs that have a keen sense of smell, dogs that are known for their hunting prowess. Okay, so in fact, one report said that over 90% of the hideout finders in Warsaw, Poland, were carried out by the Jewish police. Now, they would arrest these Jews and put them on the trains to be led to their deaths in the gas chambers. Now, but today you don't hear the Jews saying, we were the ones who were killing ourselves. No, because they know, like the rest of the world knows, that collaborators are just secondary factors. Or maybe they were doing this under duress. Okay. Another instance was Thomas Sankara, Captain Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, who was the president of Burkina Faso from 1983 to 1987. And he was assassinated by his bosom friend, Blaise Compaoré, who was a Burkinabe like him, who would succeed him as president of Burkina Faso. But you see, Africans and the rest of the world know better than to accuse any other person than the CIA. In fact, the world says the CIA killed Thomas Sankara. They go straight to the point because they know that collaborators are just secondary factors. There was also uh, Patrice Lumumba of DR Congo, who was assassinated by his friend Mobutu Sese Seko. But the hand that signed the check was the CIA. They were the masterminds in that killing. And in the US, February 21st, Malcolm X, as Malcolm X was about to deliver his lecture in the New York Auburn Hall, what many people don't tell you is that it was two black men who took advantage of the scuffle that they had created to draw Brother Malcolm close. That as Brother Malcolm drew close to try to settle the dispute between these two black brothers, that it was two black men who pulled out their shotguns and pumped 21 bullets into his chest and killed him. But the world knows better than to say, oh, black people were killing themselves. We just go straight to the point that the CIA killed Malcolm X. In any case, C.L.R. James, one of the founding fathers of Pan-Africanism, wrote in his book, The Black Jacobins, page 7, that Africans were forced to deliver slaves, to bring slaves, or be taken as slaves themselves. They were under duress. They had to do it, or they'll be taken as slaves themselves. They had no choice. If much later it became a business, for the start, they were doing it under duress. That's the point I'm trying to make, and we mustn't lose sight of this. When the British invaded India to colonize them, they did so with not more than 100,000 soldiers. And to colonize the country that had that had hundreds of millions of people, there were Indians who, for a paycheck, were killing off and torturing other Indians who dared to resist the British, who dared to resist the British imperialism. But Indians know better than to say, we Indians caused our own colonialism. No, because they were just collaborators. They were just secondary factors. Slavery was such a big business to the Europeans that they had to come up with an intellectual underpinning, an intellectual pretext, a rationale for slavery. At first, they said that Africans were infidels, they were heathens, and so they were built to pick cotton, they were built to work in the sugarcane farm. This position was taken by the Catholic Church, the Pope himself. Spain and Portugal, in a dispute about slavery, would go to the Pope, who at that time had the highest authority in Europe. And the Pope would, tell them to stop arguing among themselves, stop fighting among themselves, because they were good Catholic nations. And he would authorize them to share the East and the West of Africa among themselves, and authorize them to reduce to servitude all infidel people. And that they needed not to feel guilty because they were doing this to a people who were outside of the grace of God. Okay? Many years later, they would come up with another intellectual underpinning, another pretext. And this time around, they would say Africans were less than human. In fact, they would say Africans were only 3/5 human. And this position was taken by one of the founding fathers of America, Thomas Jefferson, who would argue in his book, Notes on the States of Virginia. He would argue in it that Africans were less than human. Okay, so to know of all these intellectual pretexts that the Europeans had to bring up, and then to learn of the Ashanti Wars, the resistance, the many resistance that Africa had to put up, the Ashanti Wars, the Dahomey Amazons, the Zulu Wars. These were resistances that Africans put up against the Europeans. So when you ignore all of this and you keep on saying Africans were guilty of selling themselves, it means you are victim blaming, you are guilty of self-hatred, you are waving the white flag of defeat, the white flag of surrender. I mean, it's defeatism, and defeatism is, I mean, a demonstration of the insidious effect of learned helplessness. I hope I've been able to convince you that Africans were not guilty of enslaving themselves. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, leave a comment, and click on the notification button. Thank you for watching once again. Bye bye.